Well, as they've said, I'm 75. The next part is not so much fun. I was born in 1939. That means in 1945, I was 6. The same age as Sananam and Soperk's daughter, my granddaughter, who is about that big. When I was 6, in 1945, going to the theater on Saturday afternoons and watching matinees, I watched almost every week, every Saturday, I watched the news about the Holocaust and the concentration camp victims. I was 6 years old when I knew what the Holocaust was. Somewhere during that year also, I come from a Jewish family, somewhere during that year, there was this very strange looking relative who showed up at my grandparents' house. And I said to my mother, I said, "What's the matter with that man?" And she said, "He's the only relative we have left from Europe. He just got here from a concentration camp." This was at the end of the war, of course. I became very angry with God back then for allowing the world to be such a place. But then at 6 years old, I thought it was simple. They were Nazis, they were bad people, and bad people made war. Then my father gave me a copy of All Quiet on the Western Front to read when I was 12 years old. Up until then, I thought all Germans were Nazis, which many people thought during World War II because they were the enemy. So at 12, I was reading All Quiet on the Western Front. That's halfway through the book when I realized the protagonists who had given my heart were Germans. And then I went, oh, Germans are people too. And then I went, God, the problem is much more complicated than I thought it was. And it may seem strange to you that I did this at 12, but at 12 years old, I began to ask myself, what could I do so the world could be different? Who could I work with? Who's doing anything? What could I find? I began to search to see what I could do, what I could learn. Because it's not acceptable for the world to be like it was, and like it still is. In the Holocaust, there was the Jewish Holocaust, but the Holocaust just keeps going. It just moves around the planet. It's been going for a very long time. So I got into the peace movement quite young, on the East Coast at first, and then I came out here in 1965. 65, I organized the first demonstration against the war in Vietnam. I started out here. I started the War Resisters League, and I devoted my life to protest at first. But, you know, the war went on, 64, 65, 66, 7, you know, it didn't end until 75. After a while, I said, protest is not going to do it. What can I do? Then someone said to me, or I came to understand, that governments represent the collective consciousness of the people, and if we want to change the way the world is, we have to shift consciousness. That led me first to various explorations, the kind that wound me up being a manager of the Grateful Dead. After a couple of years of that, that wasn't enough either. So I began to look for a spiritual practice, and I met my teacher. As you could see, all of us up here have pretty much had the same teacher. And I've been practicing since 1970. In the late 80s, along with Sananam and her sisters and my wife and some illustrious people, Baba Ramdas, Jerry Garcia, Bobby Weir, we started creating a future for high school students. In fact, Sananam wound up in 1980, Bob Weir, 1990, 1990. Bob Weir gave her half his space at Earth Day 90 at Chrissy Field with 350,000 people. So Sonatum's first big public performance was for 350,000 people singing Save Our Earth with a bunch of kids from Creating Our Future. One of these days...
Some guy was arranging it in the background.
Also, I was blessed then to work with a wonderful woman who some of you may have heard of, named Joanna Macy. I began to learn how to listen by working with her, something I'm still learning. I used to say I'm a man who knows how to listen, but I have now gotten old enough to know that I'm a man who knows that I'm still learning how to listen. But in listening to the kids and Creating Our Future, because they were high school kids, asking them how you're doing, how are you feeling, how are you hurt, etc., and so forth, I began to become aware of how wounded most of us are. And something arose in my heart, particularly at first I began to learn about what happens when somebody's sexually abused or emotionally abused or physically abused. I discovered that we each are wounded on the planet, and that these wounds limit our capacity to be present in life, to fulfill our dreams and our destiny. So something awoken in my heart to try and heal the people I loved, and I prayed and I meditated, and I came up with a way to do it. And I've spent the last 15 years of my life going around the world leading workshops and training, and both in helping people heal their wounds, helping people change the stories, going from I'm no good, I don't deserve, it's not safe, I can't trust, I can never be happy, to I'm innocent, I deserve to live, I'm just like other people. There has never been a person who's been sexually abused in any way who didn't wind up thinking it's their fault in some way. So helping people change that to I'm innocent, it's not my fault, has been part of the work. But in doing that, much to my surprise, I finally answered my question. What's at the root of war? Why do people go to war? What can we do to stop war? Why are people so cruel? Why do so many people do businesses without caring what happens to the planet? Why don't people care? When people are treated with great brutality when they're children, they can't hope anymore, they can't love anymore, and after a while they become filled with rage and anger, particularly if they're beaten with rage and anger. This process has been passed down in our planet for hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of years. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. So what I discovered, now this is a very important discovery, is that the roots of war are in brutality towards children. The brutality makes people essentially a kind of a monster, a person who needs to hurt, a person who's full of hate, who becomes a skinhead, a fascist, those kinds of people. So, my friends, if we want to do something to effective and strategic to bring an end to war on the planet, there's one thing I now know has to happen. We have to stop producing people who need to hurt people, who need to hurt, who need to hate. There is a beginning movement in the planet that's trying to change that. The UN came up with the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Every country in the world has signed it except two. Guess which countries haven't signed it? Somalia and the United States. But the movement is happening. And there's work to do on the planet. After all these years, I've learned a little bit about how to work effectively for change. So when Sanatam and my family asked me, what do you want to do for your birthday? I said, I want to create this project of creating our future, to join, enforce, push, promote, changing the way children are raised on the planet, particularly with respect to violence. Also, to give children personhood, because they don't have it around the world. Personhood is a very important word. I just came across it. They gave me 10 minutes. I got a minute and a half left. The campaign for personhood first began with African Americans back when they were slaves, and that movement began to grow. And our country is still struggling with giving personhood to black people. As you know, thinking of Ferguson and, you know, driving while black, walking while black, or even we had somebody kissing in a car while black, and they got arrested for that. So, but we've made vast progress from the days, well, from when I was young and the freedom rides were happening. Then there's also unfolding the movement to give personhood to women, you know, to vote, have a place, to have equal place in life, although in much of the world, as you know, this is far from the case. Then there's also the campaign to give personhood to people who have different beliefs about their sexual gender and identity. All of those are unfolding, all of those are happening. They are happening and they're all in process. The last one is giving personhood to children. To say that, you know, right now in the world, if you punch an adult, it's a felony. If you punch a kid, you're a parent. And there are many people of various religious beliefs who believe that this is their right and their duty to beat their children. This has to change, my friends. I invite you to join in this work. Happy birthday to you.